Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Ask Splitsuit a Question. I'm James Splitsuit Sweeney here for thepokerbank.com, and today we're going to answer one of your questions. So today's question comes from Lubomir, and Lubomir says, "Hi James, love your videos. Can you make a video on how to deal with donk bettors? Thanks." So Lubomir, that's a great question, and fingers crossed I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And just to make sure we're all on the same page, a donk bet is a bet made into the previous street aggressor. So if we were to raise pre-flop, the small blind called us, and the small blind bet into us on the flop, that would be considered a donk bet. But a donk bet can also be made on the turn or river. So just like any other poker situation, in these spots we're going to be looking at ranges, and we're going to be looking at math, and we're going to be making decisions based upon those things. So let's just start with a situation where I would normally fold against a donk bet. And those would normally be in situations where the person who's donking is really only going to be donking a very strong range of hands. One easy situation of that would be in a very multi-way pot where a nit or a tight tag decides to donk bet into that multi-way pot, usually first or second to act. And usually in doing so, they're doing so with a very strong range of hands, going to have a lot of sets, two pairs, those kind of things, or possibly even stronger hands than that. And it's usually in a situation where they're not sure that a continuation bet is going to get thrown in there, and they want to guarantee that money goes in on that street. So when they do that, they're usually going to have a very strong range of hands, and because of that, it's usually going to be very difficult for us to give them action. And even when we have overpairs in situations like that, we want to be very, very careful that we don't get out of control. Usually not going to be raising that donk bet again if I assume that that donk range is very strong. And as always, it's all about the hand reading and making sure that you're hand reading well so that you can say, okay, I think you really only have a strong range here. My hand doesn't perform that well, or my hand certainly isn't strong enough to raise, and then you make your decision based upon that. So in general, tighter, nittier opponents usually going to donk bet a stronger range of hands, particularly in a multi-way pot. So if they do that in a situation that I'm involved in that same multi-way pot, I'm going to be very, very cautious with how I give them action. And I'm usually not going to be doing too much raising in those spots unless I think it's just some really cooler situation. Now, that all being said, that's a situation when I will fold. But as a pure default, I'm usually not going to be folding very often against donk bettors. Now, when I'm facing a donk bet, it inherently means that I'm going to have position going into future streets, which means that I'm going to do a lot of calling here. Whether I have gut shots, whether I have overcards, whether I have single pairs, I'm usually going to do a lot of calling in spots like these, simply because I do have position. I'm going to be able to feel out how my opponent reacts on the turn or river. I normally assume that most people don't donk bet only nuttish hands, which means that I assume that I'm always going to have some semblance of equity plus skill edge plus position edge, and those are all good things for me. So in general, I'm usually not going to be giving donk bettors a tremendous amount of credit. I will give more credit when they donk bet in a multi-way pot, regardless. Whether it's a tight player or even a fishy opponent, I'm usually going to give that a little bit more credence. But everything else, I'm usually going to be utilizing my position edge, my skill edge, and some semblance of card equity edge, and go forward from there. So if you're folding a ton to donk bets, I definitely consider rethinking that. Remember, good players don't tend to donk bet a tremendous amount anyway, so when someone does donk, inherently, they're usually not the strongest of all players as a pure default. And because of that, again, I'm definitely going to want to exercise my edges, and particularly my edge of being in position. So hopefully that gets you started when it comes to dealing with donk bets. Again, think about ranges, think about the math, think about how your hand performs against your opponent's range, and then make a decision from there. So Lubomir, thanks for the great question, and if you or anyone else has a poker-related question, feel free to leave them on our Google Plus page. I'll leave a link for that in the description box. And also, please make sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this type of video. So same as always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, good luck out there, and happy grinding.